Then. Thanks, Catherine. Now let's get more on our main news tonight. The latest revelations from the Oscar Pistorius bail hearing. Witnesses say they heard an argument at the home of the Paralympian on the night that his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, was killed. Barry Bateman from Eyewitness News, a South African radio station, told my colleague Gavin Gray earlier that the chances that the athlete will be granted bail increased today.
Yes, we did, but unfortunately, as the investigating officer was leading the evidence, or the state was leading the evidence of the investigating officer, when it came to the cross-examination time, a lot of what he was saying did kind of fall flat. It appears that the state they brought all the information premature. It hasn't been supported by forensic information, and even the witness statements you're referring to there, just briefly, once they started being questioned, they fell flat.
Indeed, and it seemed as though the Pistorius family seemed much more confident at the end of the day than they had been at the start that he might actually get bail.
Yes, certainly. You just got to look at the way once we started off the day with the investigating officer leading his evidence, and it did look quite grim for Oscar Pistorius. It always does when your evidence is being put before the court without it being questioned. But once defense advocate Barry Rood took over and he did start punching holes through a lot of what the state was presenting, you could see the change in Oscar himself. He didn't look as concerned. Quite often when the state was leading evidence, he would squint at prosecutor Harry Nell sometimes, almost puzzled where he was coming with this information. But once his defense advocate took over, he did seem more comfortable, more relaxed, and that was shown through his family as well.
And from your years of court reporting, Barry, have you ever known so much come out at this particular stage where we're only talking about bail?
Yeah, it's quite regular. It's not uncommon for this to happen. There's another big story I'm covering in Pretoria. It's the murder of a young woman. Her name's Chanel Henning. It was a conspiracy to commit murder. The group of people got together and they hired the murder. Now, for the bail application, the state, and it happened to be the same prosecutor as well, we had forensic data experts coming with all the cell phone data to track the location of the accused. There was an immense amount of information that came out. And why this is possible is that we don't have a jury system in this country. We do rely on a presiding officer, either a magistrate or a judge. So the fact that this evidence is presented before the court, it doesn't prejudice either the accused or the state.
David Cameron has described one of the bloodiest massacres in British colonial history as a deeply shameful event. On the last day of his visit to India, Mr. Cameron laid a wreath at Amritsar, where hundreds of unarmed Indian protesters were killed by British soldiers in 1919. Our deputy political editor James Landale was there and sent this report, which does have flash photography.
The Golden Temple in Amritsar, the holiest of holies for Sikhs around the world. David Cameron came to this corner of the Punjab on the border with Pakistan, not just to see the epicenter of one of the world's great faiths, but also to visit a place where hundreds of thousands of British voters can trace their roots. Every Sikh is expected to give up a week of their lives to volunteer here, and every day they feed 100,000 pilgrims and visitors. But if Amritsar has many ties to Britain today, it also has echoes of Britain's less glorious past. Just a few steps from the temple are the Jallianwala Gardens, and here, on April the 13th, 1919, thousands gathered for a festival. A British general was sent in to disperse the crowd. He blocked all the exits. He lined up his riflemen there and ordered them to fire. They didn't stop until they ran out of ammunition. Hundreds lay dead, more than 1,000 injured. Past prime ministers have expressed regret. The Queen has spoken of a distressing episode. But David Cameron is the first serving British Prime Minister to come here in person to pay his respects. There was no formal apology, as some had wanted, but his words in the Book of Remembrance and to the camera were uncompromising and clearly heartfelt.
This was a deeply shameful event in British history, one that Winston Churchill at the time quite rightly said was monstrous. We should never forget what happened here. And in remembering, I think it's very important we always make sure that Britain stands up for the right to protest peacefully all over the world.
This was David Cameron's last day in India, a day, he said, of shared gladness and shared sadness, looking to the future and not just the past. This rice factory nearby supplies basmati rice to thousands of British curry houses. An expanding trade that Mr Cameron believes illustrates the growing ties between Britain and India. The test of this trip, though, will come in how much trade starts flowing in the other direction. James Landau, BBC News, Amritsar.
A driving test examiner has been arrested as part of an investigation into allegations of bribery. The arrest is part of a crackdown by the Driving Standards Agency, which has been looking at allegations that the examiner has been charging thousands of pounds a time for guaranteed passes. 2 driving instructors and 4 candidates have also been arrested. Our Home Affairs correspondent Matt Prodger reports.
After months of investigation, these police officers are about to make an arrest. The man they're looking for is an examiner in the purple jacket at this North London driving test centre. His fellow examiners are not suspected of any wrongdoing.
I'm arresting you on suspicion of conspiracy to commit fraud.
He's accused of taking bribes from some test candidates, £3,000 for every guaranteed pass. As police gather evidence, their colleagues elsewhere are arresting 2 driving instructors and 4 test candidates.
We believe that the candidates have approached their driving instructor. They've had a conversation to say, you know, for X amount of money, we can guarantee you a driving test pass. The candidate then agrees to that. The then approved driving instructor then talks to our member of staff and tells them which tests to actually pass.
Investigators have identified 100 people who allegedly bribed this particular examiner for driving licences. And those licences, gained as a result of the alleged fraud, are now being revoked. Across the country, investigators are also examining 900 cases of alleged identity fraud. That's where a candidate pays somebody else to take a test for them. It's a growing problem, but not yet widespread. Of the 1.5 million driving tests a year, the vast majority, like this successful candidate, are completely honest. Matt Prodger, BBC News in North London.
1 in 5 children is living below the poverty line, according to new research by campaigners. A map using data compiled by the End Child Poverty campaign highlights areas around the country where children are poorest. In some areas, more than 4 in 10 children are living in poverty, including West Belfast. From there, Natasha Sai reports.